experience. That's better. I was going abroad, leaving my family behind. I will not be seeing the family for a few months at least sometimes for a year. I was just leaving. I went and I was preparing, packing and all that, you know, and my mind was in going, you know, the board, getting a ticket and all that. I got my boarding ticket and I went to the holding area and I got into the, this thing. My family was at the gates of the airport. And then suddenly everything settled down. I just, my bags are there, my ticket is in there, my passport is here, my things are all. Then suddenly it occurred to me that I'm not going to see my family for a year at least. You know, this was when I was going for my studies. No, that means now I can't run. I want to be with my family, but I can't run out of it because the gates are closed, the doors of the plane is closed. And it has just lifted from the ground. And it is cruising. It's taking off. And it started cruising. You know, you feel a pain in your body, a strange pain, that you are separated from your family. And I can't explain this. I'm not a poet, I'm not a good writer. I can't explain this better than this. You feel as the plane takes off, you know, the grief thickens. It becomes highly viscous and solidifies. See, that's breaking. A breaking. Physically, isn't it? Really, not only that emotional, it's actual. We are going to 14,000 feet altitude. My family is down there. That physical distance. And I know it's impossible for me to come back. At least just land somewhere for me to get back home. You think of all the impossibilities. That is breaking away. That's what has to happen in a Christian's life. Sin. Sin. Break from sin. Even if it has to go through a fiery furnace or meet hungry lions. Face it. Break away from sin. And then Peter was writing to people in Bithynia and Cappadocia and Pontus and all these people. There were probably people who paid that price. And they knew when he was reading, they could identify a Thomas or a Matthew or whoever it is who had broken away from sin forever, never to come back, and had suffered for it. They have a disdain for sin. They have distanced themselves, a safe distance from sin. Let me say, not from sinners, from sin. And that's what Peter talks about. Who have suffered among you, who have been to jail, imprisonment. And in Hebrews we read about those who have suffered the loss of their property. It was confiscated by the government or somebody else. Those who lost their parents, who are alive, they have deserted you. Those who lost their best friends. I have come across people who have lost their husbands because they took a stand for faith, and the husband divorced them at a very young age. I know it's a woman who has paid that high price. They have broken away from sin. And that's what Peter is talking about. The sermon title is The Break with Sin. Don't worry about the grammar and the phrase and idioms, English idioms and all that, appropriateness of that. The break with sin. Now, the break with sin, I explained already my first point. The break. The second is the consequence of a break. The consequence of a break. And finally, the solace that we have, some comfort we have from God. Now, see, none of us, by permission, I don't want to go back to that. I already mentioned about Daniel. There's a figure in his church history, and that is Saint Augustine. Remember the story of these Confessions of Augustine, where Augustine, when he went back to his town, the town prostitute whom he used to visit called him Augustine, Augustine. But Augustine said, no, this is not Augustine. Your Augustine is dead. Something like that he said. This is a new Augustine. Break with sin. Great, great faith. Now what is the problem with modern Christianity? The modern problem with Christianity is, especially in the free churches, is this, that we, in the name of identifying with the generation, we are just making a touch and go sort of a situation. There is a sin, and we break with sin, and we so many times during the week, we just touch and go. You know what I mean? Touch. I hope one day we'll have a PowerPoint so that I can graphically represent it. We go away, but we just come and kiss sin during the week, unable to make a break that costs dear, very high cost. We are not willing to, we are compromising. Now, I've been ministering for 25 years now. Been to different places and has been in different churches. And one thing I know, a church when you look at from the pulpit level, it's like a placid lake. You know what I mean? From the pulpit level, when you look at the congregation, everything is peaceful, everything is holy, everything is great. It's like a lake. But beneath the lake, that you discover when people come to you asking for help. Prayer, counseling, when the word of God touches their heart, they come and see you in your privately, they email you, and then you see how much filth is settled in the bottom of this lake, called the congregations. How much filth? I'm not condemning them, but I'm just saying, you know, this, we are unable to break with sin, even if it costs painful suffering. And that's what our calling is. Now, what happens to them? Then what Peter says is that they have, as the result, people who have paid a price for holiness. They do not live the rest of their earthly lives for human desires, but rather they do the will of God. They live for the will of God, rather for the will of God. Those who have been to jail for 10 years for preaching the gospel, for not willing to accept a bribe, he has forever made a resolve that he will never ever do anything of that sort. I know a man